Welcome to this unit. We'll cover the importance of labels, as this class also goes by one of these political or racial terms, Chicano. Here in the US, there are these labels that you often see on the news, and even when filling out some forms, Latino, Hispanic, and Chicano. Most people tend to confuse them. In the United States, a variety of terms are used to describe people who come from or have family roots coming from countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Two terms are most frequently used, sometimes interchangeably, Hispanic and some variation of Latino, Latina, or Latinx. So, in this unit, we'll break them down and unpack their differences. Let's start with the term Hispanic. Before 1970, the U.S. Census Bureau classified Mexican, Cuban, and Puerto Rican immigrants as whites. Each community of Latin American origin would go by their nationality and by the region where they lived in the United States. But all that changed in the 70s as activists began lobbying the U.S. Census Bureau to create a broad national category that included all these communities. The result was the creation of the term Hispanic. The term Hispanic first appeared on the U.S. Census in 1980, marking the federal government's official recognition of people of Latin American origin. This change resulted from lobbying efforts by organizations such as the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, MALDEF, which aimed to ensure that their communities were accurately represented in census data. As a result, a question about Hispanic origin was included on the census form. Before this, individuals of Latin American descent were often classified as white or identified solely by their specific nationality, which led to an undercounting of the Hispanic population. While Hispanic provided a way to count the Latinx population, it has been criticized for being too broad, potentially erasing cultural distinctions within the diverse Latin American community, and for being linked primarily to the Spanish language rather than broader cultural identity. The Census Bureau estimates 65.2 million Hispanics in the U.S. as of July 1st, 2023. They made up more than 19% of the U.S. population. Hispanic originates from the Latin word Hispania, which refers to the Iberian Peninsula during the Roman Empire. Hispania is also the source of the Spanish word España, meaning Spain. However, not all Latin American citizens living in the U.S. can trace their roots back to Spain. For instance, a Mayan indigenous person from Guatemala living in San Diego, California, cannot relate to the term Hispanic as they have no ancestral connection to Spain. Similarly, a black person from the Dominican Republic may not identify with this term either. Both of their roots are not from Spain. When the word Latino is mentioned, the first thing that likely comes to mind is people from Latin America, places like Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and so on. But where does the history of that word come from? Has it always referred to Central and South America and the Caribbean? Let's explore the evolution of Latino and uncover how a word so closely tied to geography and identity today began with much vaguer meaning. The U.S. Census officially adopted the term in 2000. It was well received and accepted in universities and other educational institutions, where Latin American studies, courses on Latin American history, politics, and culture, were taught as part of their programs. The Latin American Awards made the word Latino more popular the same year. The term is now widely used since media plays a massive role in today's society. To trace the origin of the word Latino, let's begin in an unexpected place, ancient Italy, or as it was known around 500 BCE, Latium. The people of Latium spoke Latin, and from this region, the language spread as the Roman Empire expanded. This linguistic heritage links Latin to the Romance languages, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian, all developed from Latin. We focus on the former Roman province of Hispania, now modern-day Spain, where Spanish became the dominant language. This connection from Latium to Latin to Spanish plays a key role in forming the term Latino. In the 1850s, French economist Michel Chevalier introduced the term Latin America, or Amérique latine, to distinguish regions colonized by Latin peoples, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, from areas inhabited by Anglo-Saxons. This distinction also supported French colonial ambitions in the Americas. Chilean poet and sociologist Francisco Bilbao later adopted the term as a rallying cry against U.S. expansionism during the era of Manifest Destiny. For Bilbao, Latin America symbolized resistance to imperialism. Yet the concept of Latin America is complex. The modern definition of Latino as a person living in Latin America or of Latin American descent is surprisingly recent. Spanish and Portuguese colonization spread these Romance languages across much of the Americas. Latin America underwent a complex and dynamic process of cultural and racial mixing, commonly referred to as mestizaje. This process involved the blending of diverse ethnic groups, giving rise to a wide range of distinct cultural and racial identities. A significant aspect of mestizaje was the intermixing between Spanish colonizers and the indigenous peoples who originally inhabited the region. In addition, the transatlantic slave trade brought millions of Africans to Latin America, further contributing to the rich tapestry of ethnic diversity. As a result, Latin American societies today reflect a vibrant fusion of indigenous, European, African, and in some cases Asian influences, shaping the region's unique cultural, linguistic, and social landscapes.
Because the Spanish language, along with about 1/4 of the languages in the world, is gendered by default, the word Latina also began circulating as a descriptor and identifier for women of Latin American origin. Latina is the feminine version of the word Latino. Both were used interchangeably. Later expressions like Latino A and, more recently, Latinx emerged to include both genders in media, both print and online. The term Latinx is used almost exclusively within the United States. According to Google Trend data, Latinx came into popular use in October of 2014, and has since been widely popularized by American blogs and American institutions of higher education. The term is virtually non-existent in any Spanish-speaking country. Modern feminist and gender-fluid activists have more recently sought to eradicate the binarism of male and female and rejected the terms Latino and Latina. This prompted the coining of the new label, Latinx. There is no consensus on who came up with the term, but it first appeared in 2004 and began gaining traction on social media in 2014. Other terms like simply Latin or even Latin use have been proposed, but neither have been as popular or marketed as aggressively as Latinx. Despite its contentious reception, it gained traction among activists, and was added to the Merriam-Webster dictionary in 2018. According to the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity, Latinx can be defined as a political identity that centers the lived experiences of queer, non-binary, gender non-conforming or creative and/or trans individuals. The X seeks to wipe out gender altogether, supposedly to make it more inclusive to everyone, no matter what gender identity they subscribe to.